Drums are extremely important to any band that has them. They keep the beat for the entire band, and you know, they're the main thing that makes you dance, makes you shake a little bit, gets you excited, pumped. Um, but it's not always been so exciting as it is now. Before, we didn't even have this big setup with all these cymbals. We didn't even have toms. It all started out with marching band, with just a marching snare, and, if you're someone else, then you might have the big bass drum strapped on you. Ba, ba, ba. Dancing music is the main reason the drums evolved to the way they are now. Because first it was, marching, where it was a very strong and, everyone was marching to it. So if you're just watching or listening, then you can hear that strong march and that it's very strong, makes you want to move too, just bob a little bit, and people started going off that. So in 1965, people didn't want the whole band in their house or like in their backyard for like an event or like a wedding. So there's this concept that was thought up and put into practice called double drumming, which was someone had like a bass drum right here, my right stick, and then the snare drum right here on a stand, and they just go. Just in different varieties, and people like that. It's like they could bring the whole marching band into their house, and it was very convenient. Didn't take up a lot of space. Just needed like 2 chairs or 1 chair and a stand, snare drum, and a bass drum. You only needed 1 person too, and if you wanted, you could get those lame trumpets or trombones or whatever, but all you need is. Then came the 1890s, where this dance music became ragtime, which, the leaf time. It's all the drumming became like syncopated. It was like they used the rudiments for marching, so. It was syncopated. It was just like marching drumming, but inside, and it became this whole big thing. And a lot of people were excited about it. And then they got so excited, and they started just going with it and just evolving more with it until it became swing. And swing was like when you mark time, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. With swing, it added a swing, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so I lied about 2 things. 1, I have no brain. 2nd, that's not swing. Swing is kind of like a slurred jazz. Instead of, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, it's 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Hey, shut the door, shut the door, shut the door. That's all. It wasn't as like crazy as ragtime, but you could still dance to it. You could groove, kind of swing your body. And it became even more popular with the coming of Prohibition and speakeasies, where they'd have these bands, ragtime bands, swing bands, playing in these speakeasies, and it'd be like taboo, just like drinking at the time. And that taboo just made it more exciting to hear that swing, that, oh, this is different. You don't hear this like anywhere else. With the music, it made this speakeasy just like a different world. As America grew, so did its culture. Many people from different backgrounds and cultures came together and they shared their stuff. They shared different techniques that they would use. They would have bongos, there's toms, different types of cymbals, the cowbell. There's so much stuff, so many things that could be added to these drummers' drum sets, or as back then, they would call them trap sets. Because, I mean, if you look at a picture of one of those sets, it looks like a trap. It looks like a bear trap or something. It does not look friendly. I don't know how they walk into that. And Ludwig, the very famous, this is a Ludwig set right now. They came up with, and Panda did, a foot pedal. The chain pulled it down, and it hit the bass drum. And by the way, those bass drums, since they were using actual marching bass drums, and if you've seen them, they're huge. It made like a really loud sound, and Ludwig started making smaller bass drums, and they used better hardware, like with the rims. If you had you see those cymbal stands. Then in 1913, drums were like overtaking the whole band because of how loud they were. Because drums are loud. So they started to use these brushes, and because they originally just were regular brushes, it made like a quieter sound. I don't have a brush with me right now, but I know it's somewhere in this garage. Somewhere. Then, in 1917, jazz finally became jazz. People swung more, like their rudiments, so they used this thing called a fill-in to make the drums more interesting, and they added more to the drum set and the overall band. So before it was just like a usual, just playing like. And a lot of people use the hi-hat. But adding to that, it would be. Then in the 1920s, or the jazz era, it became like the modern day rap or metal, where it's like, oh god, this music would turn your child into a killer. They'd start running around, stealing children. It was like the devil's music. Back then in the 1920s, there were silent films, and drummers were then used in 1927 to add to these silent films to make them pop out more, like feel like you're really there because you hear sound effects. So if like a train was coming, they'd have like a whistle, they'd have like this whole table like right here, and they'd pick it up, be like, and then and they'd have all these things. They'd have like these two planks of wood that they snap together to make a gunshot sound. There were just like so many different sound effects. They'd have this like thing that you could pull and it sounded like a saw. Those were called theater drummers. They were like behind the screen. There were more toms, and hi-hats were used to like keep time instead of always using the bass drum to keep time, where you have to go boom 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 boom, because then with hi-hats it sounds a bit better. brushstrokes brushstrokes became more advanced, and that was due to this man named Gene Krupa. And Gene Krupa made so many strides in the drumming community. So many different like styles, different fill-ins, different beats, developed more complex solos, and made drums a lot more popular too. And a lot of other people followed. Existing drummers, they followed his way or style. Then in 1941, bebop begins, which is more of like a modern jazz. Like to what you see now, it's more unpredictable. Like, and then on the drums, it'd be faster. It's like, it was unpredictable. People didn't want to hear the same old, like... They wanted that exciting stuff. They wanted that